"You look like you could use a shower, sweetheart." Captain Derek Holland thought it was funny when he dumped the coke over First Lieutenant Bryn Castillo's head in front of 30 soldiers at Forward Operating Base Ghazni. He thought it was just another Tuesday, another junior officer he could humiliate because rank gave him permission. What he didn't know was that Bryn's last name wasn't just a name, it was a legacy. And in 72 hours, that legacy was about to walk through the gate and end his career in a way he would never see coming. Bryn Castillo was 29 years old when a captain decided to make her the punchline of a joke she did not find funny. She stood in the motor pool at Forward Operating Base Ghazni in eastern Afghanistan, her uniform soaked with soda, her face blank, and her hands clenched so tight her knuckles turned white. It was July 2014, 6 months into her first deployment as a logistics officer with the 10th Mountain Division, and the heat was brutal even at 0 hours. She had served 4 years since commissioning through ROC, and now held the rank of first lieutenant, managing supply convoys, coordinating resupply missions, and making sure that infantry units had what they needed when they needed it. It was not glamorous work, but it mattered, and she was good at it. If you are watching this from a place where people understand what it takes to keep soldiers alive in a combat zone, drop a comment and let me know where you are tuning in from. And if stories like this one matter to you, hit subscribe because there are more of them than anyone talks about, and most of them stay buried. Bryn grew up in San Antonio, Texas, in a military family that went back 3 generations. And her father had taught her that respect was not given, it was earned, and it was never surrendered. Her father, Brigadier General Victor Castillo, had served 2 combat tours in Iraq and 1 in Afghanistan before taking a staff position at the Pentagon. He had raised Bryn and her younger brother with the same code he lived by: integrity, accountability, and the understanding that rank without character was just noise. He never told his children what to do with their lives. But he made it clear that if they wore the uniform, they would do it right. Bryn commissioned through ROC at Texas A&M and chose logistics because she wanted to solve problems that kept people alive. She was methodical, organized, and relentless when it came to making sure her soldiers had what they needed. She attended the Basic Officer Leader course and the Quartermaster Officer Basic course, and she earned her airborne wings at Fort Benning because she believed that leaders should never ask their soldiers to do something they were not willing to do themselves. Her father had taught her to shoot when she was 12, the same way his father had taught him on a range outside San Antonio with iron sights and patience. He told her that discipline was not about control. It was about knowing when to act and when to wait. Bryn carried that lesson into every aspect of her life, and it shaped the way she led. She did not yell, she did not demand it. She set the standard and expected people to meet it. What drove her was the belief that service meant something, and that the uniform represented a standard that could not be compromised. When people failed to meet that standard, it bothered her. When people abused their authority, it made her angry. And when Captain Derek Holland dumped a coke on her head in front of her soldiers, it crossed a line she would not forget. The incident happened during a routine motor pool inspection. Bryn had been overseeing maintenance checks on a convoy of mine-resistant ambush-protected vehicles when Captain Holland showed up unannounced. He was the executive officer for Bravo Company in a neighboring battalion on the same base, and he had a reputation for being abrasive, entitled, and dismissive of junior officers, especially women. He walked through the motor pool like he owned it, making comments about how slow the work was going and asking Bryn if she needed help. Managing her soldiers, she ignored him at first. She had learned early in her career that engaging with people like Holland was a waste of energy, but he kept pushing. He made a joke about how logistics officers spent more time behind desks than in the field. And then he asked her if she had ever actually been outside the wire. Bryn told him calmly that she had run more convoy missions in the last 6 months than most infantry officers ran in a year, and that if he had a legitimate concern about her operations, he could take it up with her battalion commander. That was when he grabbed a can of Coke from a nearby cooler, shook it, and poured it over her head. He did it slowly, deliberately, while 30 soldiers from both units watched. A few shifted uneasily. One half smiled and then looked away. Hollins laughed and said she looked like she could use a shower. He told her not to take it personally. It was just a joke and she needed to lighten up. Bryn did not react. She stood there with soda dripping down her face and neck, her uniform stained brown and her expression completely neutral. She did not yell. She did not curse. She picked up the maintenance log from the hood of a Humvee, noted a missed inspection item, and keyed her radio to retask the maintenance crews. Then she turned and walked back to her office without saying a word. What Hollins did not know, what none of them knew except for Bryn's immediate chain of command, was that her father was not just a general. He was arriving at Fob Ghazni in 72 hours as part of an operational assessment for Regional Command East. Bryn sat in her office for 20 minutes after the incident, staring at the wall and trying to control her breathing. She could feel the soda drying on her skin, sticky and cold, and she could still hear Hollins laughing. She thought about her father and the conversation they had before she deployed. He had told her that she would face people who did not respect her, and that some of them would use her gender as an excuse to undermine her. He said that the only way to win was to be better than them, not louder, not angrier, just better. She thought about the soldiers in the motor pool who had watched it happen. Some of them were her soldiers, and they had just seen their platoon leader humiliated in public. She knew that how she handled this would define how they saw her for the rest of the deployment. If she let it go, they would lose respect for her. If she overreacted, they would see her as emotional and weak. The only option was to handle it the right way, through the chain of command, with documentation, and without giving Holland any ammunition to use against her. But part of her, a small angry part that sounded like her father, wanted Holland to know exactly who she was. She wanted to see the look on his face when he realized that the junior officer he had just humiliated was the daughter of the general who was about to evaluate his entire command structure. She did not act on that impulse. She just sat there in the quiet of her office, let the anger settle, and started writing an incident report. Bryn submitted the report to her battalion commander, Lieutenant Colonel Hayes, the next morning. She laid out exactly what had happened, included the names of witnesses, and made it clear that she was not asking for special treatment. She was